the next speaker is Giacomo Zucco. He is libertarian activist, Bitcoin maximalist, and one of the founding members of the B Foundation, which he will tell you about later today. And his talk will be about the history of money and about the properties of various forms of money. So I think that the last people are coming in, and I will give the floor to Giacomo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, the topic is a little bit ambitious, like the history of money and every possible trade-off in the history of money. I will try to make it in 40 minutes and leaving 10 minutes to the question. If anybody of you already know me, they know that this is a lie. I will probably go over 40 minutes, so maybe somebody will hopefully stop me. So trade-offs in the history of money from shells to Bitcoin, but mostly about Bitcoin. So I will focus mostly about Bitcoin. The origin of this presentation is it working? Yeah, it is. No, it is not. Yeah. Or maybe it's in the end. Spoiler. Okay, so. Basically, the idea for this presentation comes from the fact that I was giving some talks about trade-offs in Bitcoin. The most, of course, one of the most discussed trade-off in Bitcoin is the trade-off between decentralization and scalability. We are all nauseated by this discussion so far. There is still people debating about that, but I would say that everything that was worth saying has been said. But just to recap in 30 seconds, basically, you have a property in Bitcoin which is decentralization, so the ability to every single player to be a validating full node in order to not depend from any other third party in order to know if their Bitcoin transaction is true or is not. And this property is in direct trade-off with what we call scalability. So scalability is a generic term, but in this context it usually means throughput. So how many transactions per second. So we can increase the block size as we did with SegWit deployment. We can increase the block rate, as for example, somebody just now is proposing in Scaling Bitcoin Tokyo. So you can increase the block rate, but usually this kind of changes will rise non-linearly the validation cost for the players of the system. So basically, you will make the system more centralized. Of course, you can imagine two extremes. You can imagine one version of Bitcoin in which we have one block every 4 days, and this block just contains 2 transactions, the Coinbase and 1 transaction. This is very, very bad for usability. Nobody can transact, basically, but it's very, very good for validation. On the other hand, you have a Bitcoin with 1 block every second, and every block is 1 terabyte. Of course, this is very, very good for transability and usability. Everybody can transact Bitcoin with 0 fees and trivial confirmation waiting times, but nobody will be able anymore to verify anything. So you can see the two extremes of this debate, and we are somewhere in between. In my opinion, we are a little bit closer to the easy spending side than to the easy verifying side, because if I ask you how many of you, even if transaction fees are high, can spend Bitcoin, many of you for their everyday life, many of you will raise your hand. If I ask you how many of you can actually run and sync a Bitcoin node, not so many hands. Of course, there is other kind of consideration, technical overhead and so on, but there is a trade-off here. The trade-off is also about SPV. Yes, you can have some kind of nodes that are light nodes that just trust the hash rate in order to know if one transaction is true or not. So if the majority of miners say that this transaction is true, then I will accept it as true. But this changes the decentralization model of Bitcoin. Yeah, I'm already going too much into depth about this stuff. a lot of discussion. You can find everywhere discussions about this, and a lot of smart people already said everything that was worth saying about this. I put SPV in quotes because the original idea of Satoshi Nakamoto of SPV as something trustless, where you can actually validate the node without the entire history, without trusting third parties, doesn't work. It was never implemented because it requires something called fraud proofs, that trustless fraud proofs that we don't have. So we use an SPV, which is not what Satoshi proposed in the white paper. And of course, there is a nice solution to this trade-off. So it's very difficult to choose between having a lot of transactions per second and a lot of validators in the network, independent validators. But you can have both if you just give up a third quality, which is basically the simplicity and flatness of the system. So second layer, Lightning Network or other kinds of second layers. Basically, you use, you maximize verifiability instead of transability, and you use a second layer which allows you to do basically zero-time confirmation and zero-fee transactions, which is great. Of course, it doesn't come for free. It comes at an expense, and the expense is basically security. Using Lightning Network is less secure than using on-chain transaction by definition. You have a hot wallet, you have a punishment security model, so you have a degradation in your security, but you can get scalability and decentralization. So basically, the problem of this trade-off is that in Bitcoin, as it is right now, every node has to store every information of every state change forever. So everybody has to store the information and to verify the information of everybody for all the future time. So basically, it doesn't scale because it's not distributed. It's basically replicated. Redundancy is the problem here. An interesting thing is that the redundancy is also a problem with privacy. You can have a trade-off between scalability and privacy. Think about all the innovation that people is trying to use in order to have better privacy. For example, when you want to save fees and time and you batch your transaction, so you do batching. Batching is great for fees and for confirmation times. You wait for your transaction, you batch everything, and you save fees and you save confirmation times. But you actually lose privacy because you are connecting and linking more stuff. On the other side of the spectrum, you have what, for example, Samurai Wallet is doing with Stoneway or Whirlpool or other kind of attempts to put more stuff in the blockchain. So instead of batching, you do the opposite. You put more input in the transaction, you put more output in the transaction, even if you don't use it, or you put more steps in the transaction with Ricochet, and you basically put more stuff there in order to increase your privacy, but then you lose scalability because you are spending more, you are using up more block space. Another example is zero-knowledge stuff, like confidential transactions in Monero or ZK snarks in Zcash or stuff like that. They are great because you are basically obfuscating what every node is registering. So you are giving all the information to everybody, but you are obfuscating this information. This is great for privacy, but this is bad for scalability because adding the encryption, you basically have slower transaction to write, to sign, to validate, and bigger transaction to broadcast and to store. So there is another trade-off here. Of course, fake SPV is again a problem with privacy because yes, you can have light wallets, but every SPV wallet gives up a lot of privacy, asking for full nodes what their transactions are. And you can have new stuff like neutrino and client-side filtering and a lot of stuff that can help, but basically you still have this trade-off. Then I was discussing this stuff, and I started to see other kind of trade-offs. For example, many people talk about the trade-off between privacy and security. Privacy versus security means that basically in cryptography you can have either perfect binding or perfect hiding. you cannot have both. This is a discussion which is theoretical. If somebody of you is into this stuff, you have to choose when you define a cryptographic primitive. You have to choose if you want to make the hiding, so the secrecy of the information stronger, or the binding, so the security of the scheme stronger. Even in if you read about the Mimblewimble paper, if you read about confidential transaction, range proofs, every time you're doing advanced cryptography stuff, you basically have to choose if you want to privilege privacy or if you want to privilege security, meaning protection from inflation or other stuff. And last trade-off we always discuss about is security versus expressivity. If you think about that, Ethereum, debates about Ethereum are all about this. You have Turing completeness, you have rich statefulness, but what you lose is predictability, auditability, and basically security. It's mathematically impossible to write a smart contract without fucking up your money. People cannot even, I mean, the creator of the Solidity language was not able to create a normal multisig scheme in parity. Can you imagine how can we do like the decentralized organization or advanced smart contract with this kind of trade-off here? Then there was other kind of consideration I started to think about in the last months. One was a comparison between some trade-off choices we are doing today in Bitcoin and some historical example of similar trade-off choices. One comparison that I did on, in a tweet storm a couple of months ago was basically the comparison between coinage, the practice of using, instead of a bare piece of gold, to use a coin with the image of a famous guy like a prince or a banker or a republic on top of the coin. This is something which is actually very, very close to what SPV is today. And also the practice of custody. So in order to store your funds better, people started to store gold not in their home, but in a giant vaults centralized with more security in the short time, but with a lot of centralization in the long time. So I started to decide to do something to collect all this stuff together. Then there is another point, which is all the terminology used in the book, The Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean Ammous. And this terminology is very, very interesting. He used the terminology salability across time to indicate the durability of a form of money, salability across space to indicate transability, salability across scale, which is basically divisibility, and the concept of hard money, which was, to me, very complex to put together with all the other words and terminology that we are using today to understand what are we getting, what are the features we are getting, and what are the costs we are suffering for this feature. Also, I had a very hard time to compare the concept of hard money with the concept of sound money in the typical Austrian tradition. So is hard money always sound? Are they equivalent or not? And then you have like the traditional feature of Aristotle, which are basically durable, portable, divisible, having an intrinsic value, which is something that in the Austrian tradition will be heresy. And you have the traditional distinction, store of value, medium of exchange, and a unit of account. How do all this stuff play together? It's very messy, do you agree? I see from your faces that you do agree. So this is very, very messy. And last, and then finally I can start with the presentation, and I already basically burned 30 minutes, the word cash. So right now there is a lot of debate about the word cash. Bitcoin has high fees to transact, so it's not cash. And we need to use something else, which is the real cash. Actually, the word cash is used in this way for the first time to indicate something cheap to move and something fast to move. But traditionally, cash was never fast to move and never cheap to move. If you think about physical cash, when you want to send money from the US to the Philippine Island using a bank wire or PayPal, you don't have cash, but you are very cheap and very fast. If you want to send cash, you use Western Union, and then you are not cheap and you are not fast. You are very, very slow and very, very expensive if you want to send cash. So the word cash doesn't mean fast to send and cheap to send. It means something else. When Satoshi was talking about cash, when other cypherpunks like Al Finney or David Chaum or Adam Beck were talking about cash during the discovery that led to Bitcoin, they were meaning basically independence from third parties and privacy. Like cash is a bearer instrument. Cash is something that you can give to someone else without being registered or tracked by a third party. So how do these things play together? Disclaimer here. This presentation, I really wanted to try to give some kind of simpler codification and structure to all this mess of terminology. I will try to do here in the 5 minutes I have left, but this is still work in progress. I will probably change this presentation in many times. I wanted to give it just to start to discuss it with my pals here, and so I did want to give you an example of how I would like to imagine a structure, but I will change this presentation many times. The second disclaimer is that I will be very liberal with my use of English. I don't mean liberal in the sense that I will be politically correct, but in the sense that I will be grammatically incorrect. I will probably use English words in a way that it's really hurtful, especially for English native speakers. So the final disclaimer, but you don't need it anymore because you're already bored to death. This talk, compared to my other talk, will be pretty boring. You already understand that from now. You know that I don't know how many of you were in Riga for Baltic Honey Badger. So probably one third of the audience. So in Riga, this happened. I gave a less nuanced and a little bit more simple presentation about Bitcoin maximalism. And basically, this slide was retweeted out of context, creating a lot of drama on Twitter. So unfortunately, I'm super sorry, I cannot really do that today, because today the presentation is a little bit more technical, nuanced, boring. So before starting, I will just put here this slide. Please feel free to take a picture and retweet it on Twitter without any context in order to create drama. So we are done with thank you. Retweet it like Giacomo Zucco is saying this, and then I can go on with the boring stuff. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So this is basically the very humble slide in which I try to put in 5 minutes all the history of money, passing through 9 phases. Let's start with the first phase, which is the discovery of the practice of saving and investment. How much time do I have left? 20 minutes. I can do it. I can do it. So, saving and investment. So this guy here is a caveman, as you can see. This caveman catches with his bare hands 3 fish every day, and he consumes 3 fish every day. His utility function right here basically stays the same. First day, 3. Second day, 3. 4th day, 3. He doesn't really need 3 fish in order to survive. He does need 3 fish to be really satisfied with himself. But to survive, he only needs 2 fish. Here comes a smarter caveman. This is a smarter nephew, and he basically do something which is called saving. He eats just 2 fish and save 1 for a day of work. He uses the extra day every 2 basically to create harpoon, fishing pools, food preservatives, icebox, fishing canoe, fishing boat, etc. So basically, as you can see, his utility function goes from 2 to 3 very fast, and his savings go up and skyrocket in few days, because he's learning how to save, renounce, give up consumption in the short term. Basically, he's developing a low time preference, and he's saving for the future. What do you need in order to do this? You need basically two things. First, the things that you are storing need to be divisible. Let's imagine that you are saving cows. You don't really need one cow every day to survive. You just need 3/4 of a cow. But you cannot easily store 3/4 of a cow without killing the cow. So you have a divisibility problem. You also have a storability problem. So what is the cost? How much value you have to give up every day that you store something? For example, with fish, the example was very bad because when you kill the fish, unless you have a refrigerator or some salt treatment, you basically have to you have the very fast deterioration of your savings over time. Basically, after one day, your fish is not available anymore. These things are in direct trade-off between them. So if you think about that, gold is very, very easy to store compared to silver because you have more concentration in less space. So if you want to store $1 million US worth of silver, you have to buy basically a giant warehouse. If you have to store the same amount in gold, you just buy probably a car box or something like that. So it's easier to store, but it's very, very difficult to divide gold. If you go to a cafe, let's imagine a middle-aged Roger Ver. He just wants to buy coffee. He doesn't care about anything else. His goal in life is to buy coffee. And he has this purse of gold. And he goes to the middle-aged bartender and he says, I want coffee. I live for coffee. And he cannot pay because gold is too compact. So this is a direct trade-off here. Then let's introduce the second revolution. Okay, so this slide is not intended to be historically accurate. For example, the caveman didn't have exactly this face. So, there is some historical liberties in this presentation. So second point is basically the passage between independent consumption, where Bob, which is the guy on the left, catches saving and investing. He gets to catch 24 fish every day, and Alice, she's going to catch 24 fruits every day. But their utility function is not great because basically they have a lot of saving, but they cannot really use. You have a problem called decreasing marginal utility of what you have. Basically, when you have one fish, you eat it. 2 fish, you eat it. 3 fish, you eat it. 4 fish, maybe you can eat it, but it's not a great value. You almost feel sick. 5 fish, you feel really sick if you eat it, and 6 fish, you don't know what to do with that. But if the smarter version of Alice and Bob, which are Billy and Amy, and you can say they're smarter from the fashion they're showing, if they start to catch fish and fruits and exchanging it, we have an interesting situation in which the more people you have taking part in the exchange, the more the marginal utility is going up, because I have 3 fish, I eat them, I use 3 fish to buy 3 fruits, then I use another 3 fish to buy 3 glasses of water, and everybody else is doing the same. So basically you have an increase in marginal utility for everybody. What kind of good do you need in order to have this? You need, again, divisibility, because it's very difficult to, you know why you need divisibility, because otherwise you will not match. And you also need something that probably in English is super wrong, because it doesn't mean this, but transferability. Transferability is basically the ability to not lose value when you transfer this good from one person to the other. So we put these two things together, and we see that there are, we start to have the technology called commodity money. Commodity money is basically something which is together a medium of exchange in order to do division of labor and a store of value in order to do capital accumulation. You have to do both at the same time because you get a lot of new synergies. For example, the exchange increases the marginal utility of your store of value. So if you don't exchange your fish, you don't have value up to over 3 fish. But if you do exchange, you can have value up to 24 fish. So we have to save something which is also exchangeable. But also, saving increases the Schelling convergence of a medium of exchange. What I mean with this sentence? I mean that, as you have seen in the other slide, the value that we can extract from the exchange goes up if everybody is exchanging with everybody. But you have the problem of double coincidence of wants. So I have fish, I want fruits. Alice has fruits, but she doesn't want fish. She wants bread. So I have to give fish to the guy that has bread, and I have to keep bread and give bread to Alice in order to have fish. This is messy. So the only way that we can have a very efficient exchange involving all the population is if instead of doing barter, so having goods exchanged for goods, we have finally money. So we have one good, which is the most sellable good in the environment, which basically takes over as the medium of exchange. And this is a very powerful characteristic of money. So we have, of course, this great synergy. This is also, by the way, one of the reasons why altcoins cannot work in the long run. Imagine you come into the restaurant and you see a menu of 24 or 20 dishes, different dishes, and 20 ways to pay for the dishes. Basically, it's a great innovation. You are back to barter, basically. You introduce these new synergies, but also new trade models. Basically, you have what Saifedian calls the money trap. So before, your store of value was only used for consumption. Now your store of value is useful for consumption and for exchange. So what happens? It happens that you don't have to care only for durability right now. You have to care for durability, and you have to care for scarcity and hardship of production. Because if I have my store of value, gold, and then somebody else is able to produce gold on the market and sell it on the market at a very high rate with a very low stock-to-flow ratio, then he's going to debase to the value my storage. So I need basically something new, which is called soundness. I need sound money. I need money which is different, which is difficult to produce by producers. Also, you have the problem of the big brother. If you think about that, when you exchange, when you barter anything between a meal or a sexual performance or a Bitcoin discussion for a beer or for another meal or for something else, the government will not come to take money from you or to censor you. When you do barter, the low efficiency of your exchange is such that the government doesn't really bother to stop you, and it cannot really stop you because you are not going to the market to put a great sign, I'm selling this stuff. So you're doing things privately, and your censorship resistance is very, very high. But when you move from barter to money, you are increasing your efficiency. Finally, everybody can get richer and richer and richer. We can extract the maximum of the marginal utility, but we are giving up censorship resistance because basically we have to go in the square of the village, we have to go there to put a sign, I'm selling this, and money is more efficient, bigger, and easier to censor. So if you think about that, very few governments censor activities when they are not done for money, and they usually do censor the same activity when it has been done for money. They censor it, or they tax it, which is basically the same thing, or they fine it, or they forbid it completely. So basically, the two new characteristics of money that you have to have in order to survive to the money trap and to the big brother problem are soundness, that goes together with storability, and darkness, what I call darkness. I call it darkness because if you think about the dark web, the dark market, so darkness is something where you can exchange stuff without the government coming to get you, to tax you, to fine you, to punish you, or to censor you. Okay, I will never make this presentation in time, so let's try to make just a global concept around it. I think that a very interesting way to put all these trade-offs in line is to consider two macro categories on the left, which can be divided in other categories and studied in depth. But the basic things we are facing right now in the history of money is easiness of money versus hardness of money. So hard money is money which is more sound, so basically hard to produce, and it's money which is more dark, so hard to censor. So if you want money which is hard to produce or hard to censor, what you are searching for is hardness. On the other side, you have easiness, which is money which is easy to divide and easy to compactify, which basically means store or transfer. And there are a lot of trade-offs. The red line means a trade-off, so you cannot have both at the same time. The blue line means I'm expanding this concept in other concepts. So let's go very, very fast. The first step after commodity money, so you have gold pieces without any kind of symbol on it. Then you introduce coinage. Coinage is introduced why? It's introduced because there is a very high verification cost for a merchant if you give him directly pieces of gold. Because you give him gold, he will need a scale, an hydrostatic scale, to check that your gold is true and to check that the quantity of your gold is correct and there is not like tungsten or other material inside. So the cost to verify the payment is very, very high. So why did people introduce coinage? Because basically they want to lower the verification cost on the merchant, and what they started to do was to ask to a trusted third party, the prince, the republic, the state city, the banker, the blacksmith or the goldsmith or whatever. They asked him to sign with a signature, basically with a witness, with something difficult to reproduce but easy to check, on top of a particular quantity, and then to use that instead of the bare metal as the exchange. So you have easier transactions because the merchant doesn't need to verify your stuff. He's just trusting a guy. And you have some pros, like you have more verifiability with coinage. And the other thing is custody. Instead of storing my gold myself, I store my gold together with other people in the same giant vault with the external professional. So it's outsourcing of custody. Custody basically improves the storability, and coinage improves verifiability, but you start to see some, so you're getting easiness of money, but you are giving up hardness or of money. For example, you have less soundness, the money is less sound. The typical example is debasement. Since the guy is now pushing a signature on 1 ounce of gold, what he will start to do is to push the same signature that says 1 ounce of gold on 0.9 ounce of gold, and he will just keep for himself the seigniorage, so the remaining part. So basically he is scamming you, and you don't even know, because if you want to know, you have to get back to your scale, and you don't want to get back to your scale because it's hard and it's expensive to do. So since you gave up your freedom and your ability to check by yourself, you are trusting this third party, and this third party is debasing the currency. So basically it's creating inflation. And the second problem is censorship and less darkness. So if you store your money under your bed, it's very, very expensive to do that, but the risk to be spied on, to be censored, to be punished, to be blackmailed by the government is very, very low. If you store your money in a giant, very, very easy to see Scrooge McDuck giant storage, it's easy for the government. I mean, I know that the government of Ducktown will probably tax Scrooge McDuck. So you basically lose some censorship resistance. So there is another step, and the other step is something that comes with the conjunction of coinage and basically in custody. If there is a guy already storing the gold for me, and if I'm trusting anyway a guy to sign the amount of money to have easier verifiability. So at this point, why do I have, I have to pay Mir. Why do I have to get back to my custodian, ask him back my money, and go to Mir, transfer the money to Mir. Mir will trust some other guy for coinage, for verifiability. Let's just do that. I will take the IOU from the custodian, and I will give Mir directly the IOU, and Mir will get back to the custodian to get back the money directly. So instead of having these two inventions separately, you have both together with banknotes. Banknotes means that I give my sound money to a third party. I'm trusting the third party, like Templar Knights or middle-aged banks. They're giving me a banknote. I will trade the banknote directly, and only sometimes, eventually, somebody will go back to redeem the original commodity money. This is great because this increased incredibly the easiness of money. Basically, if you have to transport 50 horses and 47 boxes of gold from Milan to Jerusalem in the 13th century, it's very, very expensive from security point of view, from physical, logistical point of view. If you transport just one letter from the Templar Knights castle in Milan that says, this goes for 40 horses and some boxes of gold, you can put your paper in your underpants. Probably in the Middle Ages you don't use underpants, but let's put it somewhere else. And you go to Jerusalem, and you will not be robbed. If you go down to Jerusalem, chances are that you have been robbed already by the height of Naples. And you arrive to Jerusalem, and you are safe, and you can take out your paper and get back, hopefully, from the central party, your money. So much more transferability, and also, finally, you solve the divisibility compactness trade-off. When you have physical money, you have to choose between divisibility and compactness. Basically, if you trade gold, this is very easy to transfer, but very difficult to divide. If you trade silver, it's very easy to divide, but very difficult to transport. With information, with a piece of... Okay, well, yeah. Okay, more easiness, less hardness. Then next step, as you can see now, there is a red arrow getting back from the original organic growth of the history of money, because now we have basically somebody hijacking the history of money, and we arrive to government money. So since basically nobody was trading commodity money anymore, but everybody was trading just representative money, it's very, very easy to basically build up a monopoly on money and legal tender laws, and basically you get to fiat money, where you don't have any kind of pro, but just a lot of cons. Basically, you have a fractional reserve, and you have more censorship. Even worse, when we switched from paper representative money to digital representative money, and when we switched from gold standard to basically Nixon empty money, we arrived to the virtual money. It's always very funny when people call Bitcoin virtual money. Actually, US dollars or euro, they are the more virtual thing that you can imagine in general. There is literally nothing backing it up, and they are entirely virtual by definition. They are mostly digital, and they don't exist in the physical world for more than 90% of the total supply. So with digitalization, you have some pros, so that your easiness is even more increased, because now you can send with internet or with telegraph your money from US to Australia in 1 second, but you are giving up even much more hardness, and you have total manipulation of money, and you have the cyclical crisis, the hyperinflation cycles, and you have also total surveillance state. This is something that cypherpunks were discussing with the Cypherpunk Manifesto and with the Cryptonomicon already in the 90s. So when we used that paper, the big brother was a problem. But now that we use digital internet counterparties, basically the great brother can know everything about us. And money is more sensitive, is the most sensitive kind of information. So this is the typical cypherpunk issue here. So trying to go very fast, there was some attempt to create startup money, so to use the digitalization of money in order to re-privatize the money. Nominal attempts were like eCash, the first PayPal, Linden, Second Life, Linden Dollars, or something like eGold, the Liberty Reserve. But this is so easy to censor, because basically the government just go there and ask, please don't do that, or I will put you in jail, and they stop doing that. And finally, we arrived to internet money, which is also magic. So internet money is Bitcoin, and it is the end of my presentation. Internet money is getting hardness back, because finally you have controlled inflation. Nobody can inflate Bitcoin. You have pseudonymity, which is good enough if you use it correctly, privacy guarantee compared to bank account, of course. No KYC, no AML. But you also have cons, like you gave up much of the easiness that you had before, because now you have again the verifiability spendability trade-off, because now if you use high fees, you remember the trade-off at the beginning: high verifiability cost versus high spending cost. That's the trade-off. We don't have that with PayPal. We have that with Bitcoin. Also, we also have soundness over darkness. Basically, the global consensus is such. Sorry, I'm going a little bit longer, but I will try to record 2 minutes. Okay, so you get the point in general. So what now? Does this mean, what is people doing in order to face this problem in Bitcoin? Unfortunately, people is getting back to coinage and to custody. People is using fake SPV in order, just like people used coinage in the Middle Ages, to ask for a third party to verify the truth of the transaction instead of them. So you don't have a full node. You have a cell phone with a SPV, a fake SPV node, and you will just ask miner, which is very, very bad for privacy, because full nodes now know your stuff, and for soundness, because now the majority of hash rate can inflate the money if they want, if they coordinate to do that. You have a lot of problems against, similar to the problems that we had with coinage and custodianship. So are we fucked? Is representative money going to come again on top of Bitcoin? Like, are we going to transact, instead of real Bitcoin, representative titles nominated in Bitcoin? And then, is this stuff going to bring us back to a government money on top of Bitcoin? Scream. Hopefully not. For 2 reasons, and then I will stop. The easiness of Bitcoin is less than the easiness of PayPal, but not so much less as physical gold. So if you're not happy with your custodian, or if you're not happy with your SPV node provider, the cost for you to switch back to full node and to full custodians of your key is very, very low compared to the cost to transact physical gold. You can send Bitcoin for a few dollars, waiting for a few hours from Australia to North America. So don't be a pussy and just use your full node and store your keys. And so it's not so difficult. And the second thing is that we have alternative. Alternative is basically layerization. So you can have both. You can have easiness in everyday use, but you can also leverage a fundamental hardness in the layer 1. This slide is very, very complicated, but basically I try to tell it in 2 seconds. Okay, failed because 10 seconds. Commodity money. Anybody is transacting with anybody. Representative money. Anybody is transacting with anybody, but everybody has to transact with somebody that will, at the beginning, in order to release the IOUs that the people will then transact. Internet money phase 1, Bitcoin. Everybody has to transact with anybody. You do a transaction, and everybody in the network has to store it forever and to verify it independently. Very, very inefficient and very bad for privacy. The next step, the next phase is, yes, of course, everybody to everybody, but using, on top of that, a new layer of anybody to anybody. So when you transact on Lightning Network, only the 2 people involved in the transaction will have to store the new state. So you are getting back from global consensus to local consensus, and you get easiness and hardness together in the same place. Thank you. I don't know if I have time for questions, but... Question during the dinner, I don't know.
Giacomo told me that it will take 40 minutes, and it was a little bit more than 40 minutes, but it's okay. Let me ask you your first question, and then we will get some questions from the audience. Can you please elaborate on what you said about if people use SPV, then the miners can inflate the money supply?
Sure. Basically, when you have a full node and Maxime is going to give you a Bitcoin transaction, you will verify the last signature, but you will also verify with a blockchain all the correctness of all the previous transaction in the graph. So Coinbase's transfers of property back to the Coinbase of that specific amount of money. If you have a Bitcoin wallet on a cell phone, what you do is with the fake SPV model, what you do is you verify the signature from Maxime once, but then all the money which is coming to Maxim, you don't verify signatures or rules or script or anything. You just verify that with the Merkle tree that transaction is mined in a block. That means that you are delegating miners to decide which transaction is valid or which transaction is not valid. That means that right now in Bitcoin with full nodes, a majority of miners, the famous 51% attack, the 51% attack in Bitcoin cannot inflate money. They can just censor or double spend their own money, but they cannot steal Satoshi's money or inflate new money. They cannot do that. They can only censor or double spend. If you move to a model of a fake SPV, where everybody is using SPV, you are trusting the mining majority completely about inclusion into blocks. So now a 51% of miners is not dangerous anymore because of double spend. It's dangerous because they do whatever the hell they want. In particular, if you remember the 2x attack on Bitcoin, there was some sentences on the mailing list of BTC1 implementation by Jeff Garzik, and there was like people asking, what are we doing? Bitcoin people will not accept this hard fork. And he answered, you don't have to care. Majority of Bitcoin people are using SPV wallet, so as long as miners are with us, we can change any kind of rule, and they will just follow blindly the majority of hash rate. That's the difference in security model. So Bitcoin security model is your node for validity and miner majority for confirmation, which are two separate things. Verification of signature, more than validity, and confirmation of blocks. If you go to SPV, fake SPV model, you are trusting the majority of miner for confirmation, so chronology, but also for validity and verification of signature and everything, and script and Coinbase rules and everything. So that's the answer.
Thank you very much. So, yeah.
Giacomo, thanks for presentation. I think you picked up the really hard topic to do in 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So if I wouldn't read Bitcoin Standard, I would be just completely like, what's happening up there? But thank you very much. I think to understand really why the Bitcoin aims to be the money and the top money is the need to understand the stock to flow ratio that you mentioned just a bit. So I think we can elaborate a bit about that, and maybe you can say why the Bitcoin has the best stock to flow ratio out of all the commodities and all the other stuff.
The money trap, basically. So let's imagine that you are using, in order to, you are using, let's say, Coke, cans of Coke as money. Cans of Coke can be produced by Coca-Cola or by other competitors, any kind of cola, and it can be consumed. So in any moment in time, there is a flow of cans of Coke produced by producers, and there is a stock of cans of Coke stored in our fridges or in our deposits. So this ratio is of flow over stock is very, very high. It means that there is as much Coke coming into the market as there is Coke stored into our fridges. So Coke is a very bad form of money, because when people start to save wealth in Coke, then the producer of Coke will, the Coke will be more valuable, so the producer will be more incentivized to produce, so they will try to produce more Coke. And since the flow is probably, I don't know, is basically, let's assume it's 1 and 1, it's like 50-50. The flow is 1 million of cans every day, and the stock is 1 million of cans, so the producer can easily double the supply of money in 1 day. With gold, it's different, because gold, for example, doesn't ever expire. Gold doesn't consume, is not deperishable. Compared to silver, for example, why does silver react with oxygen becoming gray? Because you cannot use pure silver. You have to mix silver with other metals, and the other metals become gray with oxygen, while gold stays the same forever. That means that people do not drink gold, do not destroy gold, do not eat gold. Gold is there, and the stock of gold is always very, very, very higher than the flow of new gold introduced. So even if gold goes up as price, the producers of gold, so the gold miners, will be incentivized to produce more gold, but they cannot really affect the total supply, because the amount of gold already in circulation is orders of magnitude bigger, usually usually the flow to stock measure of gold is usually around always below 2% historically, or occasionally above, but very close to 1%. So gold was very, very good. Bitcoin is the same. If Bitcoin in circulation are there, you don't consume that. So if you want to produce more Bitcoin, it's even worse, because if miners of gold wants to increase the supply, they can. They are not very effective in increasing the supply because the flow to stock ratio is very, very low. But they still can increase the supply of 1%. Miners cannot increase the supply ever, because even if they mine more, the difficulty adjustment will basically increase the difficulty. So the amount of Bitcoin will be, on average, always X Bitcoin every 10 minutes. So it's a hard, inelastic supply. I don't know.
Thanks, Giacomo, for a great talk. My question is, as a store of value, Bitcoins can be kept only at blockchain level, probably, because of security issues. But it's opened. Is there any ways or any ideas how we can put the store of value into the darkness without reducing the security? Or is it a trade-off as well?
I think that in that case, at the base layer, you have the trade-off. So you can do confidential transaction, but then you are giving up scalability because confidential transactions are bigger and slower, and you're giving up some security because, as some developers or cryptographers can explain, if you are doing, for example, you are using the discrete log assumption. If you break discrete log assumption in Bitcoin right now, you cannot inflate Bitcoin. But if you break it with confidential transaction, you can probably inflate it. That's the same problem of if the inflation bug that was discovered in Bitcoin back in 2012 or 13 or something was exploited in Zcash Z transactions, nobody could see that. It would be completely invisible. So every time you get privacy and darkness at the base layer, you are giving up some scalability, so some easiness, and you're also giving up some soundness, some security. So I think that you can, of course, the more the verification cost will go down because of technology growth. So if we have better bandwidth and better storage and better verification power, then we can probably sustain higher cost due to layer 0, layer 1 darkness or obfuscation. But it's a difficult trade-off, because already right now people is complaining about the number of transactions per second. If you put confidential transaction, you will have less transaction per second. The same thing applies to ZK snarks, ZK starks, ZK boos, and every other form of obfuscation. And as I said, also about non-cryptographical obfuscation, like Stonewall, Ricochet, Whirlpool, etc., etc.
All right, thank you very much for the talk.
Thank you.
The next talk here starts in 8 minutes, and it will be about BitNation.